What is up, crew? Welcome to Seek the Edge podcast with me, Kelsey Lensman, where our mission is to challenge you outside of your comfort zone so you can tap into the God-given potential inside. And I am recording this a weekend after two of our all women's Expand Your Limits events, strength events specifically. And we had women in Pennsylvania and in Washington. We had ages 6 years old was the youngest one, all the way up to 71 years old in Pennsylvania. And every single event weekend, it reminds me why we do what we do. And whenever you're leading anything, any business, it could be any fitness journey, there's going to be times that you question, what am I doing? Is this paying off? And that's just the reality behind it. There are going to be moments of doubt. There are going to be moments of hesitation. There are going to be moments of, is this all going to pan out? And very transparently, just like maybe you and your fitness journey, be in the business is the same exact thing. Because when you get to new levels and you're trying new things and implementing new systems and whatever it may be, there's an element of unknown. There's an element of days where you feel like you can take over the world. And there's also days where you're like, what in the heck am I doing? And I want to say thank you to every single woman that was a part of this past weekend, all of our event hosts, all of our volunteers, because it just gives you the reminder of there's a reason, there's a purpose, and there's a mission. And as the women stepped on the platform, and some were moms, some were grandmas, some were daughters, there are all different types from all different backgrounds. There was a common through thread of, hey, I'm going to break a belief of what's possible today. I'm going to show myself that the fear that comes up or that I might doubt myself, that no longer gets to be in the driver's seat. And that is the reason behind why we don't just do a podcast or just a book, even though I'm writing one, why we don't just create media behind it, as Sophia laughs about that. We don't just create media behind it and for it to sound good across a microphone. We create experiences so you can show yourself physically in reality and build proof from that. So I'm going to encourage you. This doesn't mean you have to do one of our strength events. This doesn't mean you have to do anything that we put out. But I'm going to challenge you to take what you hear and apply it in your day-to-day. And that is what this episode is going to be about, is when people see our content or they see what I do, they think, oh, push harder, go harder, do more. And they think that's the messaging that we're pushing. However, for some people, yeah, we do have to push a little bit more. We got to get us off our couch and in the gym. But for also other people, it's not about doing more. It's about doing better. And where there is better, it means balancing and understanding, when do I need to focus in and train hard or push hard, but then also when do I need to recover? And a couple months ago, I did a talk for the elite competitor group, and they have hundreds of young athletes in high school and college, and they're constantly thinking about how do they get better in their sport? How do they get better in whatever specific lane that they're trying to improve on? And my topic that I was speaking on was recovery. And I told them that especially when we're in a team or when we have a coach or when we have whoever inside of our ear saying, get more reps in, push harder, do more, that's only going to get you to a certain extent. I'm all about getting the reps in. I'm all about doing work behind the scenes that nobody sees. But there comes a time where doing more actually is more detrimental than it is help. And I'll say it like this, is when you are driving a car and you put your foot on the gas pedal, you don't drive a car by just putting your foot on the gas pedal and keeping it there until it just runs out of gas. You balance it with sometimes put my foot on the gas pedal, then sometimes I slowly step on the brake. And it's this kind of rhythmic, harmonious duo between the gas pedal and the brake. Because you know, if A, you just put your foot on the gas pedal, number one, your gas is going to go out pretty quickly. And B, your engine is not going to run that long if I'm just constantly putting my foot on the gas pedal. And the same thing happens with your body, regardless if you're an athlete in high school or you're a woman in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or you're somebody in your 20s. is we cannot just continuously put our foot on the gas pedal 24/7 and then expect our bodies to perform well, to look great, and to do everything that we want it to do. We need to understand that just as much as we put our foot on the gas pedal, we have to put our foot on the brake. And what does that look like? It doesn't mean just completely take off sometimes and do nothing and sit on your couch and watch Netflix. It means there's strategy behind recovery. There's strategy behind stress resilience. And I just interviewed a physician earlier, Dr. Page, and she had this term that I loved, and it was stress resilience. How do I understand that stress isn't necessarily inherently bad? It gets a bad rep on social media, it gets a bad rep that, any stresses should be avoidable. It's not that it's bad, because stress gives us that tension to take action. Okay, whenever we have a deadline, that's basically putting stress on the system to take more action quicker, or to finally get the motivation or inclination to do the thing. So stress isn't inherently bad. However, we also live in a day and age where we are constantly getting pinged by notifications. Everything needs to be done yesterday. It's just information overload 24/7. And so when we don't know how to either A, manage the stress input, that can be detrimental, or B, when we don't understand our stress threshold, meaning the different areas in our life that are constantly asking more and more of us, when we're not understanding how do we become resilient to that and increase our resilience to it, or decrease some of the stress load, it will compound, and that it will not go well, not just for you psychologically, but physiologically. And this ties into the body that I'm going to go into some points here, is you have specific hormones that will respond, all your hormones will respond to your environment. And so constantly, if I'm just in this fight or flight, go, go, go mode, I am pumping cortisol through my body, sometimes to the extent where now I have really low cortisol. My nervous system, my brain to my body connection is just in this sympathetic, which is your fight or flight, go, go, go state. It's great when I'm running away from a tiger, or I want to go in to do a big lift in the gym. But if I'm constantly just pushing my nervous system into this fight or flight 24/7, or a majority chunk of the day, without getting that rest and digest, my parasympathetic to be activated, I am just pushing so much into my adrenals. And that's, if you've heard of the term like adrenal fatigue, or just constantly in this high stress state internally, that will impact your physiology. So I say this to say that when we're thinking about recovery and when we're thinking about stress resilience, this isn't something that you hope you get to later. We either get to be proactive with this, meaning thinking ahead, or we get to be reactive to this when you have no other option but to pay attention to it now. And I know this personally because there are 2 times, and I mentioned this in the previous podcast, is the first time where I had my eyes open to, Kelsey, you need to pay attention to what's happening in your body and what's happening internally, is I was coming off my second bodybuilding season. I lost my cycle for a couple of months, and I ended up getting my labs, so my blood work back. And I remember receiving those blood work, and I had certain values that were just off the charts. And I was 22, 23 years old. My progesterone tanked. My thyroid was off. And I'm like, what is going on here? And so in that moment, I was a little bit more reactive than I liked, but I could have easily just kept going on with my life and not changing anything, not getting my labs. But in that moment, it was a pattern interrupt to say, Kelsey, you have to deal with this right now. And so I had to prioritize my recovery. I had to prioritize taking care of my body better than just pushing it 24/7. That was the first time where it was a wake-up call for me, was I wasn't prioritizing recovery, so now I have to. Transition a couple years later, about 7 years later, is last year, about a year ago from now, is I ended up getting my labs because I just was feeling fatigued. My body composition was just not looking the way that it normally looked, and I just felt off. And so once again, I said, okay, let's figure out what's going on underneath the hood. And when I got those labs back, I've talked about this quite a bit in my podcast, so you might have heard this in other episodes. But when I got those labs back, it was my jaw dropped and my eyes opened. And somebody that was the picture of health. I had a 6-pack, if you would have looked at me, you would have been like, dang, she is in shape. Like she is quote unquote goals from the picture of how I looked back, especially post bodybuilding season, to now here. I just came off of 2 Hyroxes. I ran a 100-miler. You would have thought, man, she is in shape. Like she has done a lot of things and it looked good. But just because it looked a certain way doesn't mean it internally was happening that way. And once again, I wasn't prioritizing not just recovery, but I wasn't prioritizing the small consistencies, fueling my body well, getting enough sleep in my system. That will lead to an optimal system. And so we're going to dig into first the foundation with stress and recovery here is recovery doesn't just mean doing nothing, and it doesn't just mean stretching. There's so many other factors that will play into it that we're going to talk through the different first types of stress that can impact it. It can be physical. So stress here just isn't psychological of, oh, I feel so stressed. It can be physical stress of training. Okay. It could be of lack of sleep. Could be mental of workload, decisions, overload, sometimes with also our family that plays into it. Can be emotional, relationships, identity, emotional piece, and then also environmental. This could be noise, toxins, just your environment in general, where your state is. And what that can all lead into, the different types of stress on the system, is it leads into a stress threshold, meaning, let's say, for example, you're training really hard, work's going pretty well, but then maybe your relationship is not going well. And so these two categories are compounded on one another. And all of us have a specific stress threshold that basically, if we go underneath it, we can operate pretty well. But as soon as we punch through that stress threshold and our body starts now exuding symptoms, or now we really start feeling the effects of it, that's where we go north of it, and now it's the repercussions of it. And so your body does not differentiate the different stress or stressors in your life. Like I said, the mental, the physical, the nutritional, the environmental, all of them are inputs into your system, and your body does not care which one it is, but those will compound to potentially be so much on the system for it to overload. So the main concept of this is your body just doesn't differentiate different stress sources. And so number 2 is the stress recovery equation. Is growth happens, stress plus recovery equals adaptation. Stress plus recovery equals adaptation. Breakdown happens when there's so much stress on the body, and a lack of recovery equals not just burnout, meaning psychological, but just your body not responding well. And so when we want to think about this from the gym, okay, you actually do not gain progress by the weights that you lift in the gym. When I am training for an hour, I am not actually building up strength in that hour. What is happening is I'm actually breaking those muscle fibers down. And then my 23 hours out of the gym when I'm recovering is I'm building those muscle fibers back stronger. This is why individuals that have lack of sleep, don't prioritize recovery, train hard all day, every day, and do not give their body enough time outside of it, they're not actually gaining progress. And like I said, this can feel very contradictory because you think the harder I go in the gym or the more that I lift and the more hours I get in there, the better my progress is. But they're not understanding how to train smart. Yes, we want to go hard. Yes, we want to train to failure. Yes, we want to feel that tension when you're lifting the weights. And yes, you should push hard. But just because that's for that hour, we need the other specific 23 hours or even off days to recover, to build those muscle fibers and come back stronger. And so it's not necessarily that you need less stress. We might need better recovery. And so here are the 5 pillars of recovery. Number 1 is sleep. Number 2 is nutrition. Number 3 is nervous system regulation. Number 4 is active recovery. And then number 5 is mental and emotional recovery. Okay. I'm also going to add a 6th one in there and just say fun. Like I talked about with the younger girls that I spoke with, the athletes then, is they wanted me to talk about red light therapy and cold plunge and sauna and all of these buzzwordy type of things nowadays. And what I mainly talked with them about is, where are you at mentally? Are you talking about what's going on in your head? Are you having fun outside of your sport? Are you prioritizing sleep? Because if we don't have our foundational pillars set, it does not matter how much red light you do or cold plunge or sauna or whatever new buzzwordy recovery tool is out there, they can be beneficial. But until we have our foundation set, it's basically like trying to build a house with zero foundation and like just trying to place bricks randomly in thin air. Like it's not really getting you anywhere because we have no foundation set to be able to build the house appropriately and with strength. So first, let's talk about the number one pillar of recovery, and that is sleep. Personally and transparently, this can be one of the trickiest ones for me because I'm a grandma, I go to bed at a specific time, but I also get up, I get going, and my quantity can lack. But when we're thinking about sleep, this is by far the biggest recovery hack, and especially if you're an athlete, if you're training, if you want to improve whatever is in your fitness, but you're not sleeping or you are disregarding sleep, you are hindering your progress. And so what we want to look for is around 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Like I said, I tend to be on that 6.5, 7, but I notice myself operate so much better when I'm around that 8-hour time frame. We don't only just want to think about quantity, we also want to think about quality. And so when we're thinking about quality, what your brain loves is consistency with a sleep schedule. If you are one night going to bed at midnight and then the next day, 9 o'clock p.m., the next day, 1 o'clock a.m., you're not getting any of your brain to your body to understand the schedule and just consistency within that schedule. And so what we're looking for here is that deep and that REM sleep. As we get into that, that is hormone regulation. That is muscle repair, which is helping you tremendously in the gym and build back and recover from what you are doing day to day in general. Some sleep disruptors, late screens, get those phones out of your bedroom or at least out of your bed in general. I will be very firm on this. You should not scroll in bed. It is a disaster waiting to happen. Not only is the blue light going into your eye and signaling that, hey, it's light outside, so I should be awake. But number two is your brain is constantly just getting hit with dopamine, and it's not actually allowing you to regulate yourself enough to sleep. Caffeine too late. Try to cut caffeine off if you can around at least 1 to 2 p.m. latest. And then just like I said, an inconsistent schedule. Your body loves predictability. It loves a schedule. So it doesn't mean you need to be every day at 9 o'clock p.m. strict. It can flex a little bit, but give yourself an ability to build that schedule, which can be helpful. Okay. Some simple wins here is the same sleep/wake time daily. Magnesium at night. I've been starting to take magnesium glycinate, and I love it at nighttime. And then just a dark, cool room. If you're somebody where you're like, my brain goes 24/7, give yourself that nighttime routine. Maybe that looks like a brain dump for 5 minutes before bed. Get everything out of your brain on a piece of paper so you're not subconsciously thinking you have to remember it, which is why you perseverate on the thought. And maybe brush your teeth. Signal your brain that it is bedtime. One thing I love to do in my home is I turn all of my really bright lights off, and I have some more kind of dim, so I can still see, but more dim lights in, and that signals to my brain it's bedtime. Slowly start to decompress and then go to sleep. Okay. For those that have trouble falling asleep, also the wake time can be incredibly helpful. Meaning if you're having a consistent wake time, maybe you're training in the morning, you want your body tired at night. And so when we're just inconsistent with the schedule in general, it is going to play out mostly in your sleep for it to not be beneficial. Number one, sleep. Number two is nutrition. When you are under fueling, go back to the reverse diet episode, you are increasing the stress on your body. No matter how smart you go into a cutting phase, no matter how much you are still cognizant about it, it is still stress on your body if you are under fueling. And this will lead to that pillar in the stress threshold that will lead to it higher. And so you have minimal other areas that you can overload because you're already putting so much nutritional stress on your body. So this is where we want to really prioritize that protein, that carbohydrate, that fat, making sure we're fueling enough, getting that breakfast, lunch, and dinner, getting those snacks in the day to help you not under fuel, but actually maintain an adequate intake so your body is able to not have so much nutritional stress on the body. Okay. Many women here are not necessarily overtraining, they're just underfueling. Is you can train pretty hard, and we're going to talk about training pretty soon, but if you are constantly underfueling, you are impacting your body so much. And by you underfueling, cognizant or unaware that you're doing it, it will lead to just that stress threshold getting hit every time. When you're fueling, you're recovering. When you're fueling, you're recovering. Food is fuel, and we need, just like a car needs gasoline, you need food to be able to allow your car, aka your body, to run well. Third here is nervous system regulation. Okay, you cannot always control outside factors. Okay, you cannot always control the stressors that are coming into your life. It's what it is. But what you can control is your nervous system regulation, how you respond to it. We can either react and get really emotional really quick, fly off the handle, get frustrated, allow our emotions to take over, or we go into the day with our system more regulated. We understand why it's affecting you, or we understand how to respond appropriately, and you know your weaknesses or your quote unquote triggers, and you don't fall into them. Okay. So what I mean by this is I've been doing something daily that has been great for me. And I will, in the morning, before I start my work day after I train, is I will do just 3 minutes of breath work. And what that is I just do 30 big inhales, big exhales pretty quickly, followed by a breath hold for 30 seconds. Then I do 30 inhales, exhales pretty quickly, followed by a breath hold for a minute if I can get there. Then I go 30 inhales, exhales, followed by a breath hold for a minute and 30, which I'm still working up to that. Okay. What that is doing is that signaling my brain to my body. I'm impacting that vagus nerve that goes right down through my diaphragm when I breathe. And it is actually down regulating my nervous system, okay, from that fight or flight, go, go, go mode to a rest and digest parasympathetic mode. Okay. Your breath is the key to you regulating. I want you to think about an animal in the wild. When an animal is out in the wild and it is about to get attacked, or it can feel that, its heart rate's going to increase. Its breathing's going to go quickly. It's not going to have really full breaths because it needs to get out quickly. And so you can tell the state of your nervous system by the state of your breath. And conversely, you can hack the state of your nervous system by your breath. So we can start the day in a more regulated state, but then also we can train our body that when we get hit with the bad news at work, or we get hit with the curveball, maybe in our personal life, we can train our system and say, okay, I can't control what's happening to me, but I can do a minute of box breathing. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds hold, 5 seconds out, 5 seconds hold. I can do that for a minute and know the curveball isn't going to go away, but I bring a better Kelsey to that situation. And that is by far going to be helpful. Also, some tools with nervous regulation: walking, getting outside walking. No, not scrolling or tapping on your phone, but just getting outside can be helpful. Some prayer or just some stillness. Cold plunge exposure, obviously, as we chatted through it initially, is you can train your body to downregulate, and either some sauna or heat or vice versa. That's why last week, actually, I had a client that goes to the same gym that I go to here. She's like, Kelsey, do you want a cold plunge? I was like, that sounds amazing, even if it was going to be cold. So we stepped in the cold plunge. Our breaths were going everywhere because it was a long time since we did it. But then we finally got to a state where we just could feel our heart rate drop, and we could feel our breath lengthen. And in that moment, we could both feel our bodies going more into that parasympathetic rest and digest state, which then you bring that into the rest of your day. So first we talk sleep. Second, we talk nutrition. Third, we talk nervous system regulation. Fourth is active recovery. And what I'm going to challenge all of the athletes out there is that your training just isn't when you're pushing hard, maybe the 4 or 5 times a week in the gym. Okay. You have to think about this differently. And I say that directly to you because I had to, being the athlete that I am, is I thought when I'm on, I'm on. When I'm off, I'm off. Okay. If I'm on training, I'm going hard. If I'm off training. When really we need to think of it of how am I taking care of myself outside of the gym? Am I actively going on a walk or a hike? Am I getting those steps in? Am I doing some of stretching or mobility work? I am the worst person at it, but I'm more prioritizing that at night. 5 to 10 minutes of stretching. Am I getting those light circuits or maybe that yoga session in, or just some zone 2 easy work? It's not just how hard you can go, but what does that active recovery look like? Okay. These sessions should not leave you drained. You should feel like, oh, I can do more. You should feel, oh, I feel great after that. And that is the goal, is we have to learn how to recover well and actively recover well. That will lead to better sessions in the gym and will lead to better outputs in general. And then last but not least is just mental emotional recovery. And this is the most overlooked layer, where just as we talked about with the young girls that I spoke with, I told them that 90% of the stress that we incur is between our 2 ears. It is the thoughts that we're thinking. It is the stories that we're playing out. It is the projections that we're having on a situation. And you will be amazed about how much your body could respond better solely by just talking with a parent or a close friend or somebody around you, B, journaling about it, or C, just having better boundaries on your day-to-day. And so that is where the mental emotional comes in, is people don't realize about how much their life impacts their output of their body. So for example, if you just had maybe a day where a lot of things happened and you just were emotionally drained, you're going to feel weaker in the gym tomorrow, bar none. It doesn't mean that you lost strength. It doesn't mean that you lost muscle. It doesn't mean that anything different impacted the gym other than your nervous system and the emotional component or lacking component of recovery. Okay. Doesn't mean that you're not going to go through those things or that we should just be this even keel 24/7. It's life. It happens. But to negate the impact that it has is doing you a disservice, because now you're not understanding why it feels harder in the gym or why it feels, man, this just does not feel right. And so when we can understand, okay, how can I emotionally or mentally recover better? Like I said, journaling, finding your wins of the day, uncovering the layers of, man, why am I going in this trajectory? Like, why are my thoughts thinking those thoughts? And so when we can uncover that, that can be helpful. Secondly, boundaries with work or with your social life is giving yourself those healthy boundaries to understand, when is my off, when is my on? I can't do everything. So how am I winning the day? That will play into your mental and emotional resilience, first of all, and recovery second. Here, time off of social media, Brick, there, I'm not sponsored by them, but I've told so many people about them. Bricking your phone, or actually getting this thing where you cannot get into your social media apps or your email or whatever that may be for you, is incredibly helpful. And I, even these past 2.5 weeks, I'm a podcast girl. I have a podcast, obviously, but I love learning on YouTube, and I'll listen to other podcasts, and I'm a gatherer of information. Like, I love learning. But I found myself just over consuming, even if it's great stuff like sermons or just other educational videos, but I was constantly over consuming great information, but it just led to my brain feeling foggy. It led just to my system overload. And so I told myself for these past 2 weeks, I'm like, you are not listening to any podcast, any YouTube video. Like, I gave myself a hard stop for about 3 weeks total. And I will tell you, being 2 weeks into this, I feel so much more mentally clear. I am actually able to have that downtime, and I just can think better thoughts in general. So having those boundaries or having that time away and you staying disciplined with that can be incredibly helpful. And also too, just from a faith or needing to control standpoint, you getting reconnected with something bigger than you, it will do a number for your mental and emotional recovery. Is we are not in control as much as we try to be, especially if you're hyper control. If I need to control this, or I think everything else is not going to go well, I am telling you, you letting go of the reins and surrendering will not only help your life a lot, it will help you mentally and emotionally so incredibly much. And so as we bring back to the 5 pillars, is number 1 is sleep. Number 2 is nutrition. Number 3 is nervous system regulation. Number 4 is active recovery. Number 5 is mental emotional recovery. And if you remember this from the beginning, is I added a bonus one, and that is fun. And if you are a high performer, a go-getter, this sounds silly, but it needs to happen is you need to add fun to your calendar. Okay. You need to make yourself have fun sometimes, because we can get into the checking the box off the list. We can get into the what needs done on our to-do list. And you taking that time away, whether it be from work or training or whatever that might be for you, and you just having fun. Like, just do it not for productivity, but do it because you enjoy it, will add to your life, and it'll actually help your stress overall decrease tremendously. Okay. You don't need to be working 24/7. You're not going to be working towards a goal every single waking moment, but you having actually a good time with your life, it will do a number mentally and physically for you. Okay. So a couple signs that you might be under recovered are this: constant fatigue, like just constantly feeling drained even after you sleep, decreased performance, irritability or low consistent motivation, poor sleep quality, plateau in fat loss or strength, increased cravings. When I don't sleep well, I want all the chocolate bars the next day. And I know that it's not just my mind thinking it, it's just because my physiology is needing those quick carbohydrates because I didn't sleep well. And so that could lead to your cravings and hormonal disruptions or dysregulations. And so what a weekly recovery structure, some practical application to tie this back together for you is, number one, daily. That looks like a sleep routine. That looks like your nutrition fueling your body well. And that might be 5 to 10 minutes of some nervous system work. It could be 2 to 3 if you're just starting. That could be journaling. That could be breath work. That could be prayer. Something where I'm intentionally pausing from the day, taking an exhale, and allowing myself either A, just to be, or B, pausing. Weekly, one full rest day. I take a Sabbath, one full day where completely not in my social media, not intentionally training pretty hard, like I'm just taking it off. 2 to 3 active recovery sessions. This could look like a zone 2. This could look like a hike. And then just one longer reset block. That might mean just get out in nature, allow yourself just to completely decompress and have something fun. And then a monthly thing for you might be a deload week or reduced intensity. We program deload weeks into our clients and our training specifically to give that usually after every 6 weeks or 8 to 12 weeks, depending on it. And then just to reflect and recalibrate. Okay. Many people reflect and recalibrate once a year come the beginning of the year. But we just did with all of our clients, we did quarterly goal and just refocus for them. And so allowing yourself to reset and recalibrate can be incredibly, incredibly helpful. And so to reframe this for you is recovery is not wasted time. Recovery is not you just sitting and doing nothing. Recovery is not you not doing enough. Recovery is you training smart and you actually working smart towards your goals. It is not a once I get here, then I will recover. It is a part of your plan. It's not just after your plan. And so recovery is that discipline, is that growth. And if I could leave you with a very simple and strategic framework to go off of, is stress plus recovery is growth. Stress plus recovery is growth. We need that recovery to allow that growth to happen. So it's not just when I get there, it is a part of the plan. And when we can proactively think about it, your goals will be inevitable. All right, crew, have an amazing rest of your day. I'll see you soon.